So, welcome to 7134 EDN, Making Sense of Learning and New Technologies for week 2. And doesn't look as though we have any online viewers at the moment, so I won't bother telling them about how to use the Q&A. Oh, it looks like Tandon is also joining us. Welcome, Tandon.
Hello.
Yep. Hello. Yes, we can hear you. So what we might do is, since most of you haven't actually filled out the introduction section of the website just yet, we might just go through and have everyone introduce themselves so that we know who we're talking to. I'll go first. So my name's Dr. Jason Zagami, and I'm a lecturer at Griffith University, where you're studying. And my expertise is in digital technologies and new technologies, and that's what I do my research in, and also a lot of my teaching. So we might just go through, starting on what I see as my left, which I think is Nav, or Naveed. So, Nav, would you be able to introduce yourself? Just let us know maybe why you're doing the course, or what course, what program are you in, and why did you choose to do this particular course?
Are you asking from me? Sorry,
Yes.
I missed.
Yes, sorry, Nav, yes.
Sorry. I'm Namit, I'm from India. And I chose this course because I want to know about like new technology that we can use in education or in teaching. Because in India, still very traditional method of teaching are used.
Wonderful.
So I want to get more knowledge about this. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll be able to do that through this course.
Yeah, thank you.
Beth, could you go next?
Oh, hello. How are we all? Yeah, well, my name is Beth. I work at an independent school, and this is my final subject of my master's. And I have a real interest in technology and how that can transform learning environments. I teach upper primary, and yeah, this subject is pretty much right up my alley, and I'm looking forward to investigating the elements that that involve technology in the classroom.
Wonderful. Dana, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Dana Dalton. I'm originally from Canada, and I've been living in Australia for 7 years. I teach high school, and this course is of interest to me because I believe technology is a way to engage the students. I believe the more technology that we have in the classroom, the more enhanced learning that we have for students. So I'm keen for more technology in the classroom.
Wonderful. Bhutan, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hello everyone. I'm Hutan Hoviatus. I'm from Iran, and I've worked as a teacher for more than 10 years as a Persian literature teacher, and I choose this course because I'm interested to improve my skills, and honestly, I'm not good in technology at all, but I think it's necessary to improve in this area, and that's why I choose this course.
Thanks, Hutan. Stephanie, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name's Stephanie, obviously. I have a background in ESL teaching, so my interest lies with engaging students using technology, because my students are adults. They don't really have much exposure to technology, so I like to sort of explore ways to get them involved in their own learning processes using technology, I guess.
Wonderful. And Tandon.
Hi, my name is Tandon. Can you hear me,
We
by
can.
the way? Oh, okay. I'm from Bhutan, and I've been living in Brisbane for 3 years now. So I want to do this course to learn more about advanced technologies in the educational setting, and just want to know how it affects the delivery of learning. Yeah, I guess that's it. And actually, I'm a childcare teacher, so I'm not sure how it can help the childcare, but yeah, I want to know if there's anything that can improve in the childcare setting by using technology.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll be able to identify some.
yeah,
And we'll explore those as we go through.
hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit about the course. The structure of the course is that we spend a little bit of time preparing you to be able to analyze new technologies, and then we're going to explore a number of new technologies, and then we finish up with you coming up with a plan of how to transform an organization in their use of new technologies for education. So students often come to this course at different levels. Sometimes we have those involved in high-level policy making, and sometimes those that are just learning about how to use technologies themselves for use in their classrooms or other spaces. So the course hopefully caters for that whole range. And if you're someone that's looking at doing things to revolutionize how technology is used in an entire country, that may be a focus that you want to engage with. Or you could be looking at how to revolutionize technology in your own classroom. So there can be a whole range of different responses to the assessment. Of course, it's all designed to help you learn about technologies and how you can actually engage with them in different educational settings. Now, last week we looked at the use of technology or the research into educational technologies. So there's some readings there just to familiarize yourself with the idea that the use of technology in education is quite serious. We do a lot of research around it, and there's lots of different ways that we can research that. Now, some of you will be doing some courses later that will involve research, and you may want to incorporate study of different educational technologies as part of that research. So that's why we include elements of that in this master's program. And also, many of you may want to go on in future years to potentially do PhDs or further study into education, and you might want to then consider exploring educational technologies as part of that future research study. Okay, so this week we're going to focus in a little bit more on a specific concept called systems thinking. Does anyone have any idea what systems thinking might involve? And this is where I find out if anyone actually did any of the readings.
Jason, Beth here.
Okay,
I've
Beth.
only had, I'll be honest, I've only just had a look at the initial videos that you put up there on systems thinking. From the very limited amount of viewing that I've done on that section of the course, is it to do with looking at an entire, like in the context of a school or in a classroom or whatever, it's all the different elements that actually make up the entire system, and in our particular context of technology within that organisation or within that school or classroom even?
Fundamentally, yes. A lot of things that we do in looking at educational technologies and looking at education itself in terms of research, we often try to narrow things down and break them down to something that we can understand. But sometimes in doing that, we miss the bigger picture, and we miss how problems are very often interrelated with other issues and activities that are happening in a classroom or a school or a country. So systems thinking is about expanding out our view and in trying to look at how the system that we're exploring is itself a system, but also how it interacts with other systems. So you can imagine a piece of technology, say an iPad, is a system. It has a screen and a way of interacting with it through the touch screen. It's got some sound that can come out of it. It's got apps. It's got a whole lot of communication facilities. It might be able to connect to the wireless network or a mobile phone network. And all of this represents the iPad system. And you could even break that down and look at the apps themselves as their own individual systems. But when you start looking at it in terms of in an educational context, you have to look at other systems that it gets embedded within. So the classroom itself could be considered a system, where you've got a teacher, you've got students, you've got parents, you've got a curriculum, and a whole lot of other things that impact upon that system. So placing an iPad in terms of a technology as another system within that wider system has a whole lot of interactions between those two systems. But then beyond the classroom, the school itself would be a system. And then the school within a country would be a system. So there's a whole range of systems that interact. And then you've got the wider society that has an impact upon that as well. Many schools are facing that challenge at the moment around the introduction of iPads and other devices, where there's pushback from parents because they don't understand their uses. And from their perspectives and the worldviews that they have, they don't understand how it fits in within the system in education and in the classroom. So systems thinking is really looking at how many different interconnected elements can be involved. So given that we haven't actually delved particularly deeply into the content for this week, this is always a challenge around this concept of flipped learning. It's always great in theory, but it involves students coming to a lesson having done all the prior work so that then rich discussion and interaction can occur as a result. But the reality is everyone is very busy, and I do understand that many of you may not engage with the material as much as I would like. But then I'll go into a lot of in-depth discussion. That was happening well before the internet. I remember when I was doing my master's study, we'd often grab the readings the hour before the lecture or the session, and we try to furiously update ourselves on what was going to be then discussed. But that said, we do need to frame our discussion around something, so I guess I better go through and explain a few things, and I might see if I can share my screen here and take you through this little PowerPoint presentation. Let's see how this goes. What have I ended up sharing here? Whoops, a lot of recursion. 1 second. Okay, so while I'm doing this, maybe you could have a look at some of the notes on the website for systems thinking. And there we are. Okay, so you should see on your screen, a little bit large for me. Let me zoom in a bit for you. Okay. Whoops. Hope you're taking all this in. Okay. Educational systems. So a few quotes there to help frame things, in particular to help students understand that if you don't get engaged with educational technologies and the systems that are involved, then you don't really have a good capability to be a leader in this area. Now, this slide is from the new Australian curriculum around technologies education, in which there are 5 thinking skills. 3 of them are very obviously defined around computational thinking, systems thinking, and design thinking. But there's also futures thinking and strategic thinking. But a big part of the new technologies curriculum is enabling all of our students to better understand how to think from a systems perspective. So this is not just done at our level, but it's also now being incorporated into the primary school and lower secondary curriculum. So system thinking is often used to address big problems, but our particular problems that we're going to be looking at in this course are related to education. So systems thinking makes it possible to analyze and understand complex phenomena, rather than trying to simplify phenomena like we do in the scientific method until we get down to particular variables that we can change and understand in great detail. System thinking is about making things more complex in order to understand the complexity involved in those systems. Now, as I go through, if you just want to ask any questions as we go, please do so. I don't want to make this into a lecture. We are really meant to be having an interactive discussion. That's the main benefit of this sort of approach, but let's work it through. So instead of getting into smaller and smaller parts, system thinking works by expanding its view to consider larger and larger numbers of interactions. Now this, in terms of educational theory, this draws upon an idea of mental models, where in our brain we make connections between more and more disparate concepts in order to build up a model of our understanding of different things, be it the world or our relationships with people or different scientific concepts or other concepts. It all involves making more and more connections. And likewise, we can't really explain things by narrowing those ideas down. To really explain and understand a concept, we have to build it out to a point whereby it encompasses more than itself. It's getting a bit philosophical there, but it's really, we need to step outside of something to really be able to see it in full detail. And systems thinking does allow us to do that. So I'll skip through the mental model aspects a little bit. Simply that the way we actually build concepts is by building these mental frameworks, and they involve complex systems of interactions. Just a few models there. So the reason we do this is because if we stay within the framework of the problem that is occurring, be it in education or in your class or in society or even in the world, if we restrict our thinking to being within that problem, we generally won't be able to find a solution. Of course, otherwise we wouldn't have gone down the point of making it into a problem in the first place. So we have to step outside of the problem, outside of the system that's involved in that problem, to be able to really see solutions to that. Okay, so I'll just pause there for a second and see if there's some questions. And I see there's none. Okay.
Well, Jason, sorry, Beth here again.
Okay,
I'm
Beth.
just trying to sort of frame this around the assessment. So are we sort of working towards, and I've just jumped in and had a little look at the first assignment and that, and just the initial part we have to talk about systems thinking. And so are we starting to think about an area that we would like to have a look at with the influence of technology within our own organisation, and start to, as you say, as I think it says, sorry, I'm just going to go back to what it says.
Analyze your selected organisation using the systems modelling technique.
That's right.
In Module 1, yes.
So
yes,
we
that's
sort
what
of
you will be doing.
Yeah, and are we sort of talking about, like, for example, something I'm looking at is getting that momentum with the staff on board through, how we get other staff who are sort of a little bit more reluctant to use technology within the classroom, how to bring them on board. Now, are you talking? Am I going that small, or I just need clarification on that?
No, that would be an appropriate level for the area that you're investigating. So in that case, your system would involve the range of teachers involved, but you would then look at how that system fits in within other systems. So the school as a whole would have a wider system, but maybe there would be a collection of schools in the network of schools that you're involved in, or Queensland schools that might have an influence around that. So you would need to look at those aspects, but then parental systems would have an influence on those issues. The students themselves would be a system that would interact with that system.
Anything that influences and interacts within that process.
Yes. But what we're going to go through now is actually look at how we can explicitly define these down to the point where we can make a computer model of how that system works.
Okay.
And simulate that system and draw inferences from that simulation. But that system for others might be your class, or it may be your country, or it might be even a course that you're involved in that you want to better understand in terms of its the systems involved in what's occurring in that. We will be moving on and developing what's called a Delphi study. If you've done the readings for last week, you'll understand a little bit what I mean about a Delphi study, where we get a consensus of opinions based upon a group of experts. So you will be doing that as your first assignment. But to first do that, you need to frame the questions that those experts will consider. And we use systems modeling to come up with those questions. What are the key things about your organization that need answering by experts? Okay, so moving on then. In order to build that model, we use a system called stock, flow, and loops, let me take you through some examples that will make it easier to understand. Oops, I click on the right screen. Okay, just a reminder that the system that we're creating will always be inaccurate. Okay, we don't have enough understanding of the systems involved and the complexity of the classroom and human behavior and everything else to model any system completely accurately. But it will still provide useful information and questions that we can explore through our better understanding of the systems involved through modeling. But models of the systems that we generate will always contain inaccuracies. Okay, so a supermarket can be considered a large system, but for a whole range of different uses and people using that supermarket, they will consider it a different type of system. For the owners and the management, it's about making profit. For the suppliers, it's about distributing their goods. For the employees, it's about an employment system where they can go and do work and be paid. For the customers, it's about a place where they can get supplies and purchase things. For some people that loiter in supermarkets, it may be an entertainment system where they can go for entertainment. For some local residents, it may be their social system where they can interact with others. And for some people, it may be a dating system. So a supermarket can be a whole range of different uses and have a whole range of different systems occurring within that space. And likewise for your classrooms. Your students will consider it a very different classroom system in many cases than the teacher may, or the parents may, or the principal may. And that can change and vary for different purposes. But understanding those different perspectives of the systems, so it's not just your system, but it can be also how other people interpret the very same elements as a different system. Okay, so one example of stock and flow is money, where it represents a stock. It's something that can increase or decrease. Air quality is another example. It can increase and decrease. And we can access information about air quality and analyze that and see the effects of of that air quality. Animal populations are another system, another stock that exists in systems. And this is a shot of the jellyfish that exploded in population on the Gold Coast a couple of years ago. But there's also human populations that represent stock within a system. Now, stock can change, and it changes over time. It can increase, it can decrease, it can oscillate, or it can be stable. So what might be some stocks that are involved in an education classroom type system? So one way of thinking about stocks is that they are measurable. They're something that can change and can be measured. Anyone got some ideas of things that might change and be measured in a classroom? Okay, so one thing might be student understanding of a concept. Hopefully over time we change that and it could increase, but it also might decrease. They might go away for holidays, come back and have forgotten how to do their maths problems or how to do long division or things like that. There could be other things that might change in a classroom. Anyone got any ideas?
The amount of resources given to students?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Particularly as that's something that can be used up and can decrease over time, and we can then add more into that system to increase it. What about something that might oscillate, might increase and decrease at fairly regular intervals?
Teacher.
Well, hopefully your teacher understanding doesn't decrease too much, but it might. I'm thinking more in terms of student interest and engagement. So in the morning it might be quite high, then after morning tea it might have dropped down a bit, or just before lunch it might be dropping down. And again they might pick up again after lunch and then drop down towards the end of the school day. So that might be an example of oscillating stock in terms of student engagement or interest. Okay, so moving on then. We can represent these in what's called a stock flow diagram, where we have the stock in the middle, we have stuff coming in and stuff coming out, and the common example is the bathtub, where we have water coming in from a faucet and water leaving from a drain. And this can generate what we call loops. So here we see a loop. If you can see my mouse moving, I think you can. A reinforcing loop is where population increases, and the more population we have, the more births we have. And then the more births we have, the more population we have. But then we also have a balancing loop, where the more population we have, the more deaths we have. But as the population gets smaller, we then have fewer deaths. So we see two sorts of loops there. One's called a reinforcing loop, and one's called a balancing loop. So having a look at a couple of examples, here's one that you may be familiar with in the classroom of marker pens. The teacher adds marker pens into the system. There's a certain quantity of marker pens available. Some are thrown out as they get used up. Some are being used and then thrown out. But the number of students can influence how many marker pens are being used, and also how often they're being used will influence how quickly they're being used up. And we can then create a system map of those different elements. Some of the more common ones are around population change. And here we have is mammoth population, and because birth rate was less than death rate, over time they died out. The population slowly decreased until extinction. And here's a more complex system looking at endangered animals. And this was an actual real example where originally they looked at cheetah population and how it was decreasing, and they were looking at poachers and how they were influencing the death rate of cheetahs. And And originally they were encouraging farmers to scare the cheaters away with donkeys and dogs instead of killing them. But then they also looked at keeping them in captivity to be able to then reintroduce into the system. So just giving you a bit of an idea of how we can model, in our case, classrooms, using these types of systems. Now here's one more relevant to you around professional development. So we have a certain number of teachers that are aware of how to use technology. We have a certain number of teachers that are unaware of how to use technology. And that increases every year as we have new staff coming in. But we can change unaware staff into aware staff through training. And there'll be certain aware staff that will move on through changes with motivation and support and time to be advocates of new implementations. But there'll also be a certain number of aware staff that will not be implementers. And they then may leave, or they may eventually become implementers. So this is just a model to better understand professional development in a classroom environment. Okay, so other examples of stocks and flows, reservoirs, money, as we talked about. Oh, I think I've already gone through these. Apologies, we seem to be repeating ourselves. Okay, feedback loops. So this is where in our, oh dear, I've clicked on the wrong part of the screen and headed off somewhere. Okay, let me just change. Okay, I did jump ahead a bit too quickly. Some other aspects we need to understand is that things change over time. Money changes over time. Okay, let's keep on. Okay, so for doing these diagrams, we use 4 symbols. A connector between the symbols, something that converts from one thing to another, a stock, which is our quantity, which can go up and down, and flow, which shows a change. And we can do these to look at those feedback loops we mentioned. And there's a range of different types of feedback loops. An avalanche is a reinforcing feedback loop. Epidemics are similar. World population, as it increases, the more people we have, the more people are born, and we have an increasing population. Soil fertility, predators, fire management, the growing of plants, immunization. But then we can get down to more common things that you would see in a classroom around friendships. As students develop more friends, they use their friendship skills more, which then allow them to develop more friends, and so they slowly increase in their number of friends. Temperature is an example of an oscillating loop, where the colder we get, the more we shiver, and then as our body temperature rises, we stop shivering, and then we get colder, and then we start shivering again, and that continues in an oscillating fashion. Okay, so this leads us then to connection circles. This is how we can identify the various loops that exist within our particular system. And the way to do a connection circle is around the outside of the circle, you put down all the key elements that are related to your particular system. And then you draw lines showing how they impact one another. And as you do that, you'll eventually start seeing some loops. So here we have in blue a loop between death rate, standard of living, environmental regulations, pollution outsourcing to China, and it seems to have stopped. But, okay, now, let me move on. I think I've got a couple of examples of that. Okay, here's a loop. So economic development increases the number of factories we have. The number of factories we have increases our standard of living, which increases the number of cars we have, which then also helps increase our economic development. So we see there a reinforcing loop where things keep getting better and better, as we get more factories, more standard living, more cars, and more economic development. But there's also other loops within there, and that's an example of a causal loop, where economic development goes around in that cycle. But another loop here is around air pollution. The more air pollution we have, so the more cars we have, actually, let me start with the standard living. The more standard living we have, the more cars we have, which increases the amount of air pollution we have, which then increases the amount of respiratory disease we have, which then decreases the standard of living that we have. So in this case, they're not all positive. So looking at the causal loop, we have number of cars going up, number of air pollution going up, the respiratory disease going up, but then there's a decrease, a negative, going to the standard living. And here then we see an odd number of positives or negatives, and that will then give us an indication that it's a balancing loop, where it's working to return things to stability rather than to keep increasing. Whereas in our previous loop, here, everything was positive, so here things would continuously get, this is known as a reinforcing loop, so they would continuously increase. Or in the case of the mammoths, the death rate would continuously increase. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's always a positive thing. A reinforcing loop can lead to a negative outcome, but it means that it's always increasing. Okay, so there's a range of different connection circles there that you can then use to help explain your systems. And that's what you'll need to do for your assignment. You'll need to do a connection circle, and then from the loops that you identify in that circle, you need to draw out the causal loops that are resulting from that. And if you can do a flow map, which I go back to the flow maps, which are these. They're simply causal loops done in using these symbols. So they're the same as the connection circle, just without the circle structure to help identify the loops. So questions. I've been talking a lot there and running through a fair bit. So let's say we had a classroom. What would be some of the things we would put around the outside of a connection circle for a classroom? Is someone speaking? I can't quite hear.
If you,
Okay.
Jason, I just wonder if you wouldn't mind just getting us started. Just give us a couple of things, and that might spark a little bit of.
Well, let's have one being student interest.
Right. Yes.
That might be one of the elements around the outside of the circle. Another might be student test scores or student achievement. Another might be student use of technology or understanding of technology. Maybe teacher understanding of technology. Maybe teacher engagement with the content. So there may be some causal loops there that we have as students increase their interest in technology, then that may help influence the teacher's interest in technology. So that may be a causal loop that we often see in a classroom environment. But it may then have an impact upon student attention. So as students increase their use of technology, their ability to pay attention to teacher-directed instruction may decrease. Their ability to engage with project-based learning may increase. Of course, they've got access to more resources and external links to outside sources of information. So there could be some interesting linkages there between direct instruction as a pedagogy and student-centered or project-based instruction as a pedagogy, and how technology influences those in different ways.
Okay. So it's about picking a main sort of theme for your analysis and looking at all of the elements that impact that, and then discover all the relationships between those examples.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
So the idea is to start you're thinking that of the systems involved. Let me just see if I get rid of this screen sharing. There we are. So to start thinking of the different systems involved in a particular organisation or classroom or element that you're going to explore. And this will then, we'll discuss in a bit more detail next week, will help you identify the sorts of things to explore in more detail around what could be influenced. So if a lot of it is to do with the pedagogy, and the systems that you explore indicate that the pedagogy is the main influencing factor in a classroom environment, then that might be something that you would then focus your attention on in your Delphi study. But you may discover that through your system modelling, that it's the parental involvement or society's influences that are most strong. Or it may be the external requirements of assessment. So there can be a whole range of different factors that you should explore in your connection circle and then see how they influence your particular environment. And the idea of this process is simply to try to formalize that and make it a bit more explicit than just a brainstorming process. By trying to model it as a simulation, we'll often get more insight into the really important factors that interact with one another than if we were simply just making a list of factors or creating a brainstorm map and things of that nature.
And do we have to be like? I've only just initially seen some of those symbols and things. How hardcore are we on the symbols and all of that sort of thing?
It's not a course around you learning systems modeling.
Oh, thank you.
I'm certain you'll use it, and the examples that we'll go through in a second, and you'll find on the website, will take you through it in much more detail. But the important point is to get you thinking about the interrelationships.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. In this course in the past, we've had science teachers and maths teachers in particular who really engaged with the simulation process and tried to create incredibly accurate simulations. That will always be fraught with difficulty because, as I said before, you can never completely accurately simulate a real-world complex space. We can with atoms and molecules to a certain extent, but we can't necessarily with humans because we're just too complex. But the attempt at making a simulation is what's important because it forces you to try to think about how things relate to each other at a really fundamental level.
Yes.
And that's the purpose of doing it.
No, it's getting clearer.
I understand, but do we have some other questions from others before I get into the more complex simulations? So some of you are probably trying to imagine what sort of environment you're going to base your simulations around. Could maybe we go through and just check out if you've got any ideas on the sorts of environment, be it a classroom or a childcare centre or a country or a school system that you're thinking about doing your investigation around at this point? So let's start in reverse order this time. Tandon, do you have any ideas? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you ask the question again? Is that about the source, like the organization?
Yes. What sort of
that I choose?
Would it be a classroom or a school or a childcare centre or?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of the childcare center, but if it's gonna be hard for me, then I might have to look for another organization.
Oh no, I think a childcare centre would be a perfect one to explore.
Do you think so?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
And remember, it may not be the technology that you use with the students that you explore eventually. It might be the technology used by the staff or communication with parents. There could be a whole range of different uses of technology other than just with very young children. It might be about even how you manage to use the technology yourself in terms of preparing material or keeping track of time or attendance or the budget. Whatever else is involved.
Yeah, recently we have this new technology. We have a tablet, So the website OSIS. So parents sign in and they check all the details of the children over the tablet.
Yes.
So that's a new one.
And that would be a great thing to investigate and explore. And then towards the end of the course, you then put forward a plan of how to improve that, or what other technologies can be incorporated into that to make your educational environment better.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good to hear. Thank
Stephanie,
you.
do you have any ideas at this stage?
Not really at this stage, no.
Okay.
Because I'm not actually a classroom teacher. I volunteer with a government initiative school. I'm sort of a little bit stuck.
Well, that
in
sounds
that.
like a great one to
Yeah.
investigate.
Well, we
Can
don't
you
really use much technology, and the only technology the students are really exposed to is at home, and it's more their children using them. But we're in the process of getting computers to use, so I guess that's something I could look at and in the future, sort of.
It can, and that intersection between home and school is a really great one to explore in terms of systems. Of course, the students' use of technology at home is one particular system, and what they do at school is another system. And then exploring how they interrelate with one another and how you can then investigate how that can be improved could be a very interesting approach to the task.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Patricia, do you have any ideas?
Yes. I don't know how to make this work. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I work in special education in a high school setting, so we have students in with us constantly. We use a whole range of, ours is a kind of a laptop school, so many of our students are already engaged with the laptop. The poor ones aren't. It's pretty much a socio-economic divide, really. So we try to make other technologies available for the kids who don't have access to them.
Well, that would be a good element to model in your systems in terms of the resources some students have and some don't, and how that impacts upon the overall learning system that you've got in place there.
Yeah.
And then through the course, you might then explore ways of ameliorating that process and use your experts to help explore that issue.
Yep.
Okay. 210, any ideas?
No, sorry. I know it's very exhausting, but again, my connection was very bad, and I have to watch the session video again and to understand more, because I lost most of conversations. I don't know what's wrong with my connection, but yes, again, I lost most of conversations. So I'm sorry about that, but that's what happened.
Is anyone else finding difficulties with the connection?
Yeah, a bit of disturbance, but I could hear what was being told. Yeah.
Okay. Beth, have you got any thoughts?
Did you say me?
Yes, sorry, Beth.
Sorry, it does break up a little bit every now and then, but it's okay. Thoughts on ideas for the project or for the assignment?
Yes.
The big thing for us at the moment is the shift in teacher mindset and into the pedagogy behind the use of technology in the classroom, how we can support teachers to look at the pedagogy behind it and have the resources to be able to implement that within their learning environments. So it's about supporting the teachers in the process within our junior school.
Well, that would be some interesting things to model there around teacher engagement and their interactions with other PD and other elements that they're working with, and the technologies they have access to. So I think I have plenty of rich material there to work on.
Yes, yes.
Nev, do you have any ideas? Naveed? Navneet, can you remind me how to pronounce your name?
Yes.
Do you have any ideas on the types of systems that you might explore?
Actually, I didn't use much technology in my teaching. Now I'm just a full-time student, but I like have a knowledge of using the whiteboard and use little bit back in India. And now in my studies, I am using the technology for making assignments and as listening to online session.
So I see you could approach things from two different directions. One could be looking at how a school system or school in India could engage with the use of technology. Or in the past, we've had full-time students that have actually explored their own learning systems as students, and the technologies that they engage with and the systems they engage with to support their own learning, and use as experts other students and maybe lecturers from your courses as part of the Delphi study. So if you've got access to teachers back in India, you can do a really good exploration of Indian, of your particular town or city's school systems and schools, and how technology could improve there. Or you could do it here in your particular circumstances in Australia as a student, and the systems you're involved with your own learning.
Yeah, it will be good to do as a student because it's very tough to have contact back in India.
I understand. And it would be fine to do it as a student. It's just you need to, when we get to the Delphi study aspect of identifying experts, you'll have to try to find some good fellow students to ask questions of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go back then to the study guide. Okay, so further on down, there'll be a couple of little video clips that you can look at to summarize what systems thinking is. And then we have a range of scenarios. So this first one is called the bird feeder dilemma. Let me just start it going. Here we are. So we have birds outside at breakfast, and they create a pleasant morning, which encourages people to make a bird feeder, which increases the number of birds, which makes an even more pleasant morning, and we have a nice positive feedback loop. But it also increases the attractiveness of the garden, which then also increases the pleasantness of the morning and increases even more birds. With a number of reinforcing loops happening there. And this helps deal with frustration, and that more frustration detracts from a pleasant morning. And you can keep building out to look at then the impact of squirrels. Of course, your bird feeder attracts squirrels, which decrease the number of birds, which can increase spillage, and the spillage can attract rodents, which increases your frustration. So there are a whole lot of interacting elements related to having a bird feeder in terms of a system. So that's just one little story to have a look at. The cautionary tale video tells about how we've made some mistakes around systems thinking. In this case, it was about dropping cats into Borneo to try to eradicate a particular problem, and it didn't go too well. But there's various other system simulations here. The shoe stock room is probably one of the simplest ones. And here, if we look at, well, if I run the simulation, okay. This just simply looks at, there we go. The stocks involved, where we have stocks coming in of shoes, and stocks going out of shoes as customers purchase them. And we have 2 loops related to that. But systems thinking can be around other things other than just buying shoes. This one is done around the Hamlet. Medical issues are often simulated. So you can have a look at the flu simulation. And for some reason the others aren't visible. I'll just reload that. So there's a range of simulations there for you to try out, and they increase in complexity. Down to some very complex ones involving, this one is the simulation done at Stanford University about how people would treat prisoners. A very famous experiment where half the class was prisoners and half were inmates, and very quickly it became evident that people were very cruel to the inmates. But there's a range of other simulations that you can explore. Let me have a look at this one. This is the infection one. So you need to make some decisions when you create a simulation around the initial amount of people involved. So this might be the number of students involved. In this case, how often they interact with each other, and that determines how quickly things are spread. And so then we have a simple little simulation of the spread of flu, and you can then see the various simulation diagrams related to that. This would be our connection diagram. So some of the things related to flu was the number of pencils in the classroom, the kindness of people, and a whole lot of other factors that you wouldn't necessarily think about initially when you would consider the spread of flu in a classroom. But I'll let you explore about some of those because they take a little bit of time to have a look at. Now, down towards the end, there's some further readings that you can engage with. Now, you can create your own complex simulation if you wish. I've given you links to the resources for doing that somewhere up here. Where is it? Okay. Now, I don't expect everyone to create really complex simulations. As long as you can do your connection circle and build a basic model of stock and flow around those issues, that will be sufficient for you to have enough understanding of simulations to be a benefit for your subsequent tasks. But if you are interested in simulations and want to read further, there are a couple of readings that you'll find towards the bottom of the page, and a number of videos that can help you understand the use of simulations more in various year levels, including very young year levels, where they use simulations to understand storybooks. At the very bottom is the Insight Maker. So here you can use this tool to create those simulations if you want to get involved in that. But the task for this week is to have a look at some of those activities and analyze your particular organizational system and try to come up with your own models of that. Again, don't worry about them being perfect. The process is what's important in terms of trying to make them, which is where you'll learn most of the elements that you need to. Okay, so time's getting away with us. We've talked a little bit about assessment, so hopefully for next week, if everyone can have a look at the assessment tasks that are going to be involved, particularly the first one around the Delphi study, you'll see that part of that is to develop a systems model, the equivalent of 300 words, and from that identify a range of challenges facing your particular organization or yourself if you're system is yourself that you're looking at. And it'd be good if you could come back for next week and show us some of those attempts at creating systems so that I can help you through that particular process.
Excuse me, Jason.
Yes.
Jason, I'm just scanning the assessment outline, and you just in the 300 words. Are you asking for a 300-word explanation on the on your diagram on your system, or connection circle and flow map? Do you want the 300 words on that, or is it sort of that's the equivalent to that?
Okay. The way we define it is it's 300 words equivalent. So
Yeah.
if making your system model would be the equivalent effort of writing 300 words, is where we sort of come from. So you don't have to actually count out 300 words of explanation.
No.
Yeah, it's to give you a rough idea of the amount of effort involved in each particular section.
Okay, so it's not like a research paper type thing. It's a series of tasks, so to speak.
Essentially, yes, but they all build together. It's more like a project report, where each of these build towards the ultimate outcome of the project, which is a series of predictions where you're going to come up with 2 scenarios of the future for your organisation. Those scenarios will be based upon solid research methodology, or at least an attempt at a solid research methodology using the Delphi process, where you're going to identify a range of experts, and those experts are going to answer or consider the questions that you pose. Those questions come from your systems model, and then you'll build a consensus around the responses of those experts that you'll use to build out some scenarios about what may happen in the future in your particular organisation.
Okay.
So the actual task itself is fairly easy. The Delphi process is what challenges most students, actually identifying 10 experts. Now, they don't need to be world-leading experts. They need to be experts in your context. So they may be your colleagues or your friends, people you know that have an understanding or interest in technology or educational technology or teaching and learning. They may be fellow students. They may be academics that you know and can relate to. And you'll simply be asking them a series of a few questions that they then answer and vote on. And we'll have an online voting tool that you're going to learn about next week that we'll use for that. Does anyone else have any questions around that assessment task at the moment? I probably should clarify the other 2 elements of the assessment. The first element is the completion activities. Now, these involve you doing things such as attending these doing the quizzes, and a couple of other things like that. They're pass-fail type things, so you either do them or you don't, and you do enough of them and you get the full marks for that 20% task. So it's a nice way of boosting up your percentages simply by participating in various activities. Then there's 2 main assessment items, the Delphi study, which is what we do first, where you end up with the 2 scenarios of the future for your organisation, and then the final assessment task where you develop an implementation plan to carry out some of the ideas that you identified through your Delphi study into an organisation. And for those of you that are doing it around yourself, the implementation plan might be to how you will do things better in the use of technology in the future. So, do you have any questions about that? Okay. So I'm aware it's getting on a bit. We don't want to be here too late. We'll try and keep these sessions to an hour. Just going through what we're going to be looking at next week. Okay, so any final questions about the things that we talked about this week? Okay, so next week we're going to be exploring how to predict the future through use of various approaches. The main one will be the Delphi study. So please have a look at the readings for next week, and of course have a look at some of the material from this week, and if you haven't done so, some of the material from last week. I don't expect everyone to go into huge depth into those readings, but you do need to be familiar enough with them so that when you come to the assessment task, you can refer back to them and engage with them at the appropriate level. So next week we're going to be in particular looking at a number of Delphi studies called the Horizon Reports, which look at how technology is going to impact upon school education in the next 5 years. So please try at the very least to have a skim through those Horizon Reports or the Horizon Report prior to our discussions next week. Okay, any final questions from anyone? Okay, so I look forward to seeing your introductions on the course website. If you're having troubles getting into the course website, let me know and I can assist you through that process. But please put up an introduction so that we can refer back to that when we're discussing things with each other and engage with those readings. Okay then. Any final thoughts or comments? Everyone's being very quiet, hopefully not stunned. Okay. Now, I am able to modify this course quite significantly if there are things that you are not finding engaging or you would rather have focused on other elements. So please let me know and we'll endeavour to cater for your particular educational needs as you progress through. So any feedback is welcome and I'll do my best to incorporate your thoughts and interests into what we're going to be studying.
Thank you.
Okay,
so I'll see you all again here next week.
Thank you, Jason.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.